So, picking up where we left off, I thought we could use the scenario of people going to haunted houses or people going to horror movies. Why do y'all think that people pay money to get scared in these situations? It seems like counterintuitive on its face that you would pay money to be terrified.
This I don't quite understand. I mean, paying money to see a horror movie, okay, although I've never understood the challenge of, oh, this will be the scariest one yet, Mutilator 8, let's watch the guts spill and the, like there's not, it also is shown by the type of media I don't consume, in this type of year. But the actual paying to go and go to like a haunted house per se, or we in Illinois you have a lot of like haunted corn mazes and haunted hay rides and actors dressed up and supposedly paid to come out and scare you. And I mean, it's kind of maybe it's a seasonal thing for people too, where they just like to put themselves out of their comfort zone and embrace sort of shared media. I couldn't say without being that type of person exactly why it happens, but I've just always felt bad. Like the haunted house people, I've always felt bad because I've known a few friends who worked at a haunted house, and yeah, they're paid like next to no wages. And some people, when scared, react by punching and kicking and biting. And I just thought, these people who work... Yes! I have a friend who's like, I bit somebody at a haunted house that scared me, and he had it coming, and it was like...
Well, then that person is a little too close. Not your friend, but whomever was doing the scaring. But this may be painting with a little bit of a broad brush, but I do feel like both haunted houses and horror movies, they create safe danger. So you feel the thrill without any actual risk, which makes it exhilarating rather than traumatizing. And I think for a lot of people, that's what it's about. And I also think there's this, for some people, desire to prove that they can handle it. And if you're not in that boat, maybe you're in the boat of doing it in a group or doing it in a team. Like I remember back, this was just after Hurricane Sandy. So I was very much looking forward, or Superstorm Sandy, to seeing my colleagues because I had been basically isolated by myself for a couple of weeks and I hadn't seen my friends. And so we decided that we were going to go and as a group do this Times Scare, which was a place in New York City that you could go to and walk through. And it's no longer there, unfortunately, but very similar to what you were describing, Eric, earlier. And to do it as a group, there is like this team building element of it because you're all confronting fear collectively. You're doing it together and you don't know what's around that corner, right? And it's funny because you don't want to be the person who's leading the group and you don't want to be the person who is the last in the group because you don't know what's coming up behind you and you don't know what's in front of you. I will say that we all got a little bit of liquid courage beforehand. There was a nice bar in Times Square. But it was just fun to do, and we did it together.
Yeah. You talking about haunted houses in New York City is bringing me back a memory, and you'll understand this because New York is known for having some of the most elaborate haunted houses this time of year. I mean, they are, I've never seen anything quite like it. But the last haunted house that I went to was in New York City. And after I did this one, I was like, okay, I think I've had enough. I don't think I ever need to do a haunted house again because their actors were extremely interactive. And all I got to say is they're lucky that I wasn't one of those people to punch someone in the face out of shock because they got too close. It was too interactive. I was uncomfortable. But it was still just an incredibly elaborate, well done haunted house that was actually based on New York urban legends. So they had they had the mole people and they had all that kind of stuff. It was really, really well done, but also like the actors were too good.
Yeah.
Too much of my personal space. That kind
And
of pushed me over. Like I was not having fun with that.
when you talk about the reactions, though, and Eric, you spoke about this too, it very much reminds me of this one video. I don't remember if this was last year or 2 years ago, but I shared it here in the doc. This is of one of the NBA players getting spooked by a clown, and you see his reaction to it. And it went viral naturally. It probably was on Sports Center and a bunch of other uh, sports shows. But it just goes to show you that nobody really is immune to being scared. And people have these natural reactions where they get physical. And this upcoming time of year, I feel like you see a lot of these types of videos pop up on social media. Sports teams are just one example where, well, they'll take their whole team to go to a haunted house together and post what happened. So, um, yeah, LaMelo Ball clocked the clown pretty hard.
Yeah, well, and clowns are
Clowns are a
definitely
whole
a
other story.
trigger for some people. How does this panel feel about clowns? Like,
Largely thumbs down on clowns.
Yeah.
okay.
Me
However,
too.
miming and the clown as an art form, because they have clown schools and clown college. The traditional cultural depiction of a clown does not work for me at all. But actual clown, the way to convey emotion and performance in an unconventional manner, is a huge life skill that is actually incredibly effective. The way that you smile and like a child smiles in reaction is like all this extra level of human performance. So I support the art, but I've never met a clown I didn't want to punch. So
For sure.
Like an actual clown. I'm like, they look happy, but they're sad, but they're happy.
Can really scare you. That's the thing. And there's maybe the thing about it is that there's such a low barrier to like the person themselves, right? Like, yes, they do have on this face paint, but there's something about that, right? Like that. I don't know. Like the rest of the costume doesn't bother me as much. It's how they make up their face and the fact that there's just a person beyond that paint. Like there's no mask. I guess you could call it a mask of sorts, but yeah, it terrified me as a kid. The original.
Yeah, I think what it is you're being lied to, and you're aware of it, because this person's, they've painted a smile on, but they could be grimacing, and it looks like their face is smiling, and you're like, immediately that lack of control over somebody else's emotion puts you in danger, ultimately.
And the whole interaction with kids, like
I think that's the thing, is like there's potential for it to be like a wolf in sheep's clothing, right?
Exactly.
Because traditionally people would think of clowns as being safe for kids. So it allows a character like Pennywise, for example, to, well, first of all, only the people he wants to see him can see him. So he only appears to the children. And what are the kids going to do? Like run and tell their parents they saw a scary clown that their parents can't see? Especially it's like takes place in, what is the original story with the kids, takes place in like the 50s, I think. Like
Derry.
Yeah. So, I mean, what parent wouldn't be like, at that point in time, wouldn't be like, oh, it's a clown, kid, get over it.
Yeah. I think we should scrutinize any group of people with like infinite access to children.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I do just want to say, both of y'all, I think, are like exactly on the point, because the science agrees with you, or at the very least, Psychology Today agrees with you. So they talk about the reasons people like to be scared as, one, I think this is like a very key requirement for being scared to be like a pleasurable experience, is that there is a safety net. So it's like knowing, hey, I'm pushing the envelope a little bit, but I'm doing it in a safe way. It's like in a movie theater, or, I'm paying to go into this like haunted house, which is a manufactured setting where nothing bad is actually going to happen because they don't want to get sued. So it's a little bit of like getting to face those fears, feeling like you get to push the envelope a little bit, maybe a little bit of thrill seeking behavior. Very similar, Micah, I think you brought up the roller coaster example. It's a way for us to do this with that safety net. They also talk about the adrenaline rush and how your brain doesn't differentiate between the adrenaline rush you get from like a good jump scare in a movie and the adrenaline rush you get from something else. So it feels good when you are able to experience that in a safe way. And that, I mean, how do most of us react after we get got by a good jump scare in a movie? There's the immediate like, and then we usually laugh right after, right? There's that like group catharsis. And that's another thing that they pointed out is that experiencing scares in a safe way is a really good community builder. So it allows people to feel closer to each other if they're doing that together.
So it was great team building.
Yeah, it was. But I wanted to ask y'all, is there a line for y'all between something being fun, scary, and it being too much? Like I shared my example of the New York City haunted house where the actors were they were too good. They were too in my face. And that immediately made it stop being fun for me. I didn't enjoy the experience because of that. Do y'all have a similar line with the types of things that kind of cross the line of, no longer being fun?
For me, if I'm going to be scared, I expect like it's so funny. It's again, I think, born from a desire to control the situation, but like I need there to be a narrative. I need there to be a good, strong narrative. This is mostly in spooky stories and spooky like movies. If something devolves into like an all-out gore fest, I'm not here for it. Watching people make other people suffer is not like a great thing that I choose for my escapism. So for me, the line is, well, what are we getting out of this? Like, even if the story ends up being no more deep than we shouldn't have gone down that well, into the crust of the earth, then that's at least a lesson rather than having some monster creature, killing people just because that's what it does. So for me, I'm really hooked to the story, the purpose around horror and the purpose around like us engaging in horror. Which seems to be to learn more about ourselves or explore the parts of the human condition that are not often explored. So that's I really rely though on a degree of safety net and comfort for my horror. So anytime horror doesn't have that safety net for me, I'm uncomfortable and I don't have fun.
I'd pretty much +1 most of what you said, Eric, and I think the gore factor that you brought up, like I'm not really there for watching somebody get carved up. I just don't think that is horror in the way that I understand it. I want something that's more psychological in nature, something that's going to challenge my mind. And I think that, there are mixes of different types of horror genres that work well together. And, somebody like Michael Myers might be a good example of that. I don't think they take the gore to the nth degree, but I think, there's also kind of the methodical, pathological approach that he takes that no matter how slow he moves, he's still going to get his prey. Then you have other movies like The Woman in Black, which is much more of a psychological thriller. There isn't as much of the blood and guts. And so I think for me, the line is like, I'm not going to go watch a slasher film. That's just not up my alley. I know for some people, they love it, but I want something that gives me that adrenaline rush. And I don't think that, somebody getting knifed and carved and all that that doesn't do it for me.
Yeah, I mean, there are movies too that are very gory that I love, like John Carpenter's The Thing, and the creature effects in that to kind of, and it's gooey and it's disgusting and it's gross and you're like, this is horrifying, but like at its heart, again, there's that survival psychological component of being isolated and trapped in, and the gore aspect comes from something a little less direct than another human being doing the killing. And so maybe that's my thing is I prefer if it's a non-entity or monster doing the killing, and then I can watch gore. But if it's another person, I'm checking out.
Yeah, I think where I draw the line with gore is with like the realism of it. So if something is really campy, like I think about, if we're talking about slasher films, I think about like the Scream movies, for example. Those are pretty campy, right? And so there is like an element of you really have to suspend your disbelief to go along with that story, which is fine. But I am definitely someone who I can't watch extreme gore. I saw a movie recently. I won't name it because I don't want to give any spoilers, but like there was one scene in particular that was like a close up of a person like shaving another person's like skin off their face. And as soon as that started, I was like, nope, I can't. Like, because it just makes me want to vom,
Ugh.
honestly. And that kind of stuff, I feel like usually when films and TV do that, it's just shock factor. It's not scary. I feel like it's intended to gross you out, and it does gross me out to the point where it can kind of take me out of a story if they focus too much um on the shock factor of using gore. Yeah. But Micah, you kind of took us into what I wanted to ask next, which is about genres, because obviously we know when it comes to scary stories, movies, TV shows, there are a lot of sub genres. You were talking about how you tend to lean more towards the psychological. You also mentioned slasher films, but there are also monster movies, paranormal movies.
Mm-hmm.
Home invasion is another, I would say,
Oh,
of
Oh, true.
scary stories.
The Strangers
Oh
and
God, and that's one of my
such.
favorite movies,
Oh.
honestly. Terrified me. But I wanted to ask, does anyone else have any particular preference for the way they like to get their scares?
So, well, look, I love a good monster movie. I will say that off the bat. But to go a little bit deeper on the psychological, because I feel like that's only natural, you have to. I think the big thing about it is that it really blurs the line between perception and reality. And there's something to be said for trying to outsmart the story itself. Even though you might be scared at the same time, you're working to try and figure out the puzzle. And that's what really will draw me into a good psychological thriller, and with elements of some of the other things that you mentioned, Laura, whether that's, some paranormal, some monsters. Again, I'm not as big on the slasher component of it, but I do feel like a lot of psychological thrillers can have that element to it. It's just not, front and center. And so I do think it's the expansion of the mind, right? It allows you to think about things in a completely different way. It's not all that different than what a fantasy might offer you, but it's offering it to you in a little bit of a different way.
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that, and definitely, science fiction, fantasy, horror are all kind of the same when you get to have these paranormal elements to them. I absolutely love ghost stories, no matter what. Tell me a ghost story. Tell me the idea of beyond the grave. A lot of it is the great unknown, and we don't know. We think there are rules, or the stories you hear have some through lines through them, but like ultimately a malevolent spirit is the most terrifying thing to me that I will watch. That I will watch the hell out of.
Children don't scare you?
Children are creepy, but like
They're also creepy.
Hollywood. There's also Hollywood creepy though, where it's like every damn new horror movie has a kid singing the Lord's Prayer or something in some creepy attic, and it's like, come on, we all know this. Like, the words are sounding creepy, but like, I think to your point, Mike, about psychological horror, there were movies I saw that I was excited to see in theaters that I ended up disappointed in. Secret Window with Johnny Depp is one. Dream House with Daniel Craig and Rachel Weisz is another. Where in order to tell the psychological story, you have to revert to like an unreliable narrator type aspect to their quality. And so if I can't believe, and I mean utterly believe, in the reliability of my senses, i.e. what the story is telling me is happening, then it becomes less about, unless like in The Sixth Sense or with that Nicole Kidman movie, The Others, where it's like the entire plot is based on the unreliability and like it's done in a really cool way, then it falls flat for me. So ghosts are always interesting because presumably there's an intention that you can figure out, that maybe they're telling you about what it is, and then you can resolve it. Or if you get a powerful enough exorcist, they can vanquish it. So it's like there's a way out. But then there's also this alien nature of, we can't possibly discern what they want. The idea is sometimes the way to solve it is just to avoid it. And so finding out which is the right story for any particular horror film is interesting to me.
Yeah. And I think all of these categories that we're talking about, they do explore the dark side of human nature. And I think we're all horrified and fascinated by what humans are truly capable of doing. And there's also the fact that a lot of these movies, shows, and stories, they expand the idea of what's possible. And I think we all like this idea of being able to flirt with the supernatural.
Yeah. Well, that's a perfect transition, because in a moment we're going to be talking about what we think horror stories and villains say about us in society, like what's the mirror that it holds up. So we're going to be diving into that right after this break.